Hi, good afternoon, good morning, and hello to those of you watching this back. I'm live today with Don Bora. Don and I met about 8 months ago and we had a great conversation. And then he went and posted something live last week, which had a little tagline at the bottom saying, "Let's start a conversation." So I said, "Okay, let's do it live." And Don took up the challenge. So we're here today to have a conversation about whether you're overlooking the power of diversity in your hiring process. Now, Don's a co-founder or a serial co-founder for 8-Bit Studios. He's a serial entrepreneur, a mentor, and a coach. So we're going to have a pretty honest conversation today about what he's seeing in his business, but also what he's seeing in industry as well. So we're both in tech and we're both like living in this world. And there's quite a lot that I think both of us want to change. And we want to have a discussion as to how to do that, but also, how do we enable this? What's actually going on right now? So, Don, tell us a bit about yourself. What's important to you? What made you actually accept my challenge? Yeah, let's hear it from you.
Yeah, I suppose hearing that, I believe that's my fault because I put the prompt at the end of that post. The reason I accepted was because we were introduced through a fellow coaching friend, and you
Hi, Jacqueline.
met. And she's wonderful. My God, she came and ran a whole offsite for us. It was just great. So you were so amazingly generous with your time. You met me at the airport. You were flying out of the country. You were flying out of the UK somewhere. And you were like, let's hop on a call. I got time before my flight. I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. Let's do this. So you were just an amazingly generous person and very, very authentic. And that's why I'm here. I loved your energy. Bit about me. So I'm a tech co-founder. I have been in tech for about 30 years, a little over 30 years. So my career does predate the internet and all this wacky stuff we have going on right now. And I describe myself as HR curious because I for the first 9 years of 8-Bit Studios' existence, I had finance and HR reporting up to me. And I've always been fascinated by how effective HR can be when shaping a company. And I find myself at a lot of these events where I can get trim credit, even though I'm not an HR professional. Someday I'm going to cash those credit checks in for something meaningful, or maybe a certificate, a little badge or something. But I'm very passionate about diversity in the tech space. And I guess I'm either lucky or unlucky because it's like one of the hardest places to achieve diversity.
Actually, something you've just said kind of made me want to ask you immediately a question, which was, what was it that actually made you go and do your coaching qualification? Because it just came out when you were saying, oh, this is, it's not really the space. I mean, what? But you've done your coaching qualification, so there's obviously a driver for that, which is probably somewhere around this. So thought I'd ask.
Yeah. So the day that I became not the leader of HR at my company, I began. We reached a certain size where I was kind of challenged in ways that made me not react well. And so I got myself into therapy and, kind of started tinkering around and fixing all that stuff. And then I realized that there were these skills, these deep listening skills that I could get better at. And so I had Jackie and I both took coaching framework from Tilt 365. Pam Boney, who founded the company, who has since become a good friend of mine. I had told her about my want of like learning coaching, and she was like, unless you're going to learn it and be certified, it's really not something you want to devote your time to. And then she came out with this framework, and she called me up one day and said, I think I have something for you. This is like a pathway to leadership coaching. And I took it, and I got to say, I thought I was a good listener before coaching. Now I know better. I'm much better now than I was before. And I just think I think everyone should do it. I think especially everyone in leadership should definitely take a class and learn how to do it, because it's extremely effective, and it blows my mind how ineffective I was before it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I say I went from being a leader who coached to a coach who leads, because they're so similar in the skill sets. And actually, like you say, leaders really need coaching skills to be able to get the best out of their people. And to sit in this discomfort of us, quite often as leaders, we're high achievers, we want to push things forward, and yet to enable others and listen to others and help them grow for what actually they want to achieve, rather than it being about us, like taking the ego out, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the key, enablement, right? Taking the ego out. Enablement is basically just letting them be their awesome selves, and you get out of the way. And that often is in conflict with leadership, where usually ego drives somebody to be in a leadership position. But once you get there, you really should put that ego in the back seat and help your people, enable your people to be better on their own. It's very tricky and very nuanced, and I love it.
Yeah, it's super interesting, because I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and we will get on to the other topic shortly. But it's like we promote, or we have been promoting people that very much high individual achievement into leadership roles. And then actually when they get there, then saying, right, now the job's over here, because now you're supposed to enable everybody else. It's like, we've praised you for doing this, and now jump. And, it's having to help them bridge that gap between what got them there and where they need to go to be able to enable diverse teams, especially to thrive, to be able to produce their best.
I was just listening to a podcast yesterday that talked about the Peter Principle. Are you familiar with the Peter Principle?
No.
So it was written by a guy named Peter something in the 70s in the US. And the Peter Principle is basically people will rise to their highest level of incompetence, meaning that once somebody has demonstrated competence and a skill, they're seen as a high potential person, and they're elevated to a position of leadership where there's the skill that got them there is not the skill they need in their current job. And that's the whole idea of that. I've seen it. I've been subject to that in my career. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Like, you're a great software engineer, we should make you the tech lead. And then they get there and they're like, I don't want to deal with people. I just want to code.
Yeah, totally. And this is what you see. And a bit like you, I'm dealing with a lot of founders, and they're generally really good with tech. They don't need help with the tech. They need help with the leadership and understanding how to build a business, which is dependent on them as people rather than just their technical capabilities. And I think you and I both say this with compassion, because we've both been in these positions. It's like, you're creating a system within the business that doesn't fulfill actually what we need in terms of a leadership system.
Yeah.
And be able to live the values. And we're seeing this a lot. I mean, you've got the Simon Sinek one, which is trust versus achievement. And there are other ones like systems now where high achievement versus values, how you're living the values of the business. So there's a recognition, but it's a journey. It takes time and it takes commitment. And I think actually that's where it brings us on to diversity now, because that is the core of any of these problems, whether it's diversity, whether it's sustainability, whether it's, all these other things that businesses are struggling to actually shift the needle on. It takes commitment. It takes getting uncomfortable. It takes asking those hard questions and recognizing, we don't know the answer. However, I'm going to move us straight on to one of the things that you said in your post, which was you called yourself a diversity junkie. So I'm interested, what do you mean?
So I play with language a lot, and I try to identify myself in ways that will engage people. And I stumbled upon the term diversity junkie years ago when I was trying to explain how I, as a tech leader, not necessarily anybody in the HR or officially in the DEI space can be an advocate. And I was nervous about the term allyship, and I'm not nervous about it anymore, but I was nervous about it up front because, as we were talking earlier, before the live went on, I was afraid that I didn't have the receipts to show allyship. And so diversity junkie felt like, it's maybe somewhat disrespectful term now that I'm thinking about it after you asked your question. But really for me, I'm just very passionate about building diverse teams. I've been passionate about it for about 25 plus years, probably a couple decades now. I got exposed to it accidentally earlier in my career, and side story here, funny side story. So my third job out of college, I worked at Ernst & Young. We had an advanced development center here in Chicago. And now, granted, the entire tech team was men, but this is the first time I've ever worked alongside with people who weren't born here. So we had Pakistani, we had Indian, we had Russian, and I was thrilled. I learned so much on a daily basis from these colleagues of mine, and we had so much fun. In fact, we all shared a conference room. It was the nuttiest thing. We're like 15 of us shoved in this conference room to work together. And we called it the United Nations because of all the backgrounds everybody came from. And I had so much fun on that team. And I was very young at the time, but the thought struck me that, well, if we're having fun, we've got to be doing good work, because we're not working in silos. We're very open to critique from each other. We're very open from learning. We've got to be doing better. It's got to be better than just one person gunning at one task. And sure enough, over the years, the research has proven that correct. But it was just kind of this notion I have. And so the first time I got to build a team, I was like, all right, here's what I'm seeing. We are missing women on this team. So let's go hire women. And that's when the recruiter said, yeah, you can't do that. I was like, okay, I get it. I understand. Yep. Okay. But let's figure out how to do it. Let's figure out how to do it the right way.
So like you say, all the statistics show that diverse teams, like in inclusive environments, obviously, let's just make that a given, are stronger, more innovative, they make better decisions. So how have you seen that in action since you started building your businesses?
Yeah, I can tell you that we tend to hire for collaboration and cohesion. We look for the growth mindset in the people we're hiring during our hiring process. And we've got a pretty standardized hiring process. After they get through me on the tech team, it's a very standardized process. And I want to talk about that because I think that's very important and somewhat controversial, but I'd love to see it at scale. I've seen time and time again, innovative ideas come from the most unlikely historical source, meaning that, we have a full A-list design and experience team. These are the best of the best. These are fantastic people. So usually you'd think that when they've done something, it gets thrown over to tech just does the work. But we have consistently proven that the tech team can come back and say, what if we did X, Y, or Z? And I've noticed that when we have diversity on the tech team, that happens more frequently. Can I prove it? No, I cannot prove it. I find that, being a small company, less than 50 people, I find it difficult to get those statistically significant numbers in place. But I kind of know it when I see it. So I'm one of the reasons that I'm attending all of these HR lunches is to be able to unlock some of these measurement tools. Like, how can we start measuring this? Because I know it's very difficult, and I know there's a lot of opinions out there, and I think that we're kind of on the verge of seeing what best practices might be.
Right. Yeah, because it's always the question, isn't it? What's the measurement? How does it actually appear in the business? And just having the statistics, the overall statistics that everyone knows and everyone sees now. It's almost like you still get caught by these questions as to, okay, well, how's that going to show up in my business, in my context?
Yeah, and to be able to disaggregate the data. So right now, like, you know, we can look at the company 4 years ago, we can look at the company today, and we can say we're more profitable today. Why? I don't know. Like there's like we haven't done any one variable in isolation. We've done a dozen things every single year for the past 4 years. So I can't point to like, well, we have a diverse team, so we're making more money. I can't point to that, nor would I ever concede to point to that.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So what is, in your words, the power of diversity then?
I have a theory that people who love working in diverse groups, people who really enjoy that, I believe they have an innate growth mindset. This is a theory I'm working on, and I'm trying to connect the dots on right now. If you have, if you've got a team full of growth mindset people, these are people who are naturally open to new ideas and naturally open to collaboration. That leads to push and pull, to positive friction, and that ultimately leads to innovation and superior products, which is all we want to do for our customers and partners. That's all we want to do. So I believe the power of diversity is when you've got people that really enjoy working in diverse environments, it's the spark that goes boom.
Interesting. So you've just used, and you've mentioned them earlier, like your values, your business values, to actually explain why diversity is important, what the power of diversity is. And, you know, I keep some kind of, the word curiosity just keeps on flashing into my head. It's like, if you can stay curious and you can be in that mindset where I'm not trying to prove myself, I'm trying to, I'm being curious as
improve. You're not trying to prove yourself. You're trying to improve yourself. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So what are, I mean, you've just shown me the cards before we came online, but what are the values of the business that you kind of started talking us through?
Yep. So I'll go ahead and show you the cards. So ours are lead humanly, play seriously, operate inclusively, and lead humanly. And we use these values as often as possible. We use them every Monday morning in our team stand-ups. I have operate inclusively blown up behind me because that's the one I'm most passionate about, which kind of gets into the belonging as well. And I just heard somebody say something very powerful to me. DEI is a layer of your business. It's not a thing you put in the hiring process. It's not a thing you put in your yearly reviews. It's something that goes across the entire business and touches everything. And so, you know, when we look at our values, one of your questions really started me thinking about this, like how does lead humanly, how is it touched by diversity? Or how can lead humanly impact diversity? And it really started me thinking, honestly, like I'm really going to start to do some homework on this, because I firmly believe that it's interwoven with all of this. And now that I've got this mindset of DEI becoming a layer on the corporate, on the company, I'm definitely going to start teasing this apart, because we do have these written up, you know, what these values mean. And we have a handbook, and all of our people have seen these values. We shout people out all the time for, you know, how they're leading humanly, or how they're operating inclusively, or playing seriously. I'm going to have to develop that further. So I really appreciate that question.
Right. You've just gone back to what we said a minute ago. Actually, you're championing people who are role modeling your values.
Yes.
You know, you're calling them out, you're praising them, you're highlighting, which is obviously reinforcing it. But like you say, it's about integrating them into your business. It's not making them something you put on the wall behind you like you've got. That's great. But unless they're being lived in the business, I think we see this a lot in businesses, is, you know, and I wrote an article, I think it was last January, which said, let's get your values off the wall and into your business this year, because that's what a lot of businesses are actually struggling with, I think.
Yeah.
So But anyway, let's go back to the hiring process, because that's what we were wanting to talk about. So what has worked for you, just so you can share with everybody else? What's worked for you in creating this kind of inclusive and unbiased hiring process?
So I got a little bit of a rough start to this in my career. I had been very vocal about wanting to be inclusive and diverse in our hiring process. And I didn't have the language to describe it back then. I don't remember what I said, but I started to get pushback from people. It was very strange. Some of the pushback I got was very predictable, but the sources of the pushback were unpredictable to me. So the pushback I got, and everyone's heard it before, is, but don't you want to hire the best people? Well, of course. I mean, everyone wants to hire the best people that they can find. Everyone wants to hire the most qualified people that come through the funnel. And I realized that the language I was using was causing conversations to shut down. And that's the last thing I wanted. So I started to refine how I talk about this. And I as refined as I got, I'm still somewhat controversial in what I do. I like to say I bring intentional bias to the hiring process. And if our director of people and operations is watching, she's probably like freaking out and rolling her eyes right now, but I'll get there. So, because she and our CEO, Heather, have done a fantastic job at standardizing the hiring process once it gets through the phone screen. On the tech side, I do all the phone screens right now. And what I screen for is collaboration, basically somebody that I can work with. So I know I'm biasing that for sure. It's somebody I can work with. And I'm also making sure that representation that I would like to see on the team gets bubbled to the top of the funnel. So in effect, I'm taking what's an unlevel playing field, and we all know it's unlevel. We all know it's tilting in my direction, and I'm tilting it the other way. So I'm making it favorable for people of color or women to make it to the top of the funnel first. Once they get to the top of the funnel, once they've proven to me on a quick phone call that they've got the basic skills in place, they're collaborative, we had a good conversation, I pass it on to the hiring team, and that's a very robust process that's cross-discipline and involves men and women from all the departments, and that team is standardized and robust in a way that guarantees that the person I said passed muster is the right person for the job and is the best qualified.
Okay. So there's an intentionality about it, is what you're saying. And actually, again, you're coming back to your values to say, yes, there's these many people with the right skill sets, because the hard skills are, generally fairly, I wouldn't say easy, but then, obvious, thank you. But then you're intentionally saying, right, who are the ones that actually fit what I know in the business we hold as the values? And this is quite often what I'm talking to founders and leaders about, is intentionality of hiring people who live your values. Because if you feel that they're not going to live your values, obviously they're not really going to fit within your organization. You're doing them and yourself a disservice to try and bring them in and squeeze them into something that doesn't fit. And then the rest of it is on the other side, because it's actually, if they fit within the values, we can teach them. If they've got a basic skill set, you can teach them whatever else it is they need to know.
Yes, 100%. I 100% agree with that. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So what do you think is it that makes it hard to create that intentionality?
Well, I think it's hard to systematize the intentionality. So in the tech sector, what makes it so hard in tech is that one could make an argument that the tech pipeline is not diverse, and one wouldn't be incorrect. It takes work to get diversity in that pipeline. And so, going to cities that are maybe more affinity aligned, or even going to affinity groups, that can make it less challenging. But I think the hardest thing is like, I'm me, number one. Number two, I'm a founder, so I can kind of do what I want. And we've got very smart people in place, who most of whom happen to be women in the company, who tell me when I'm like stepping outside of the bounds or over the line. But the truth of the matter is that I'm bringing me to these conversations, and so I know my intention, and I've spent years refining my intention. I think the trick is how you systematize and train when the intention is there, or even get somebody. So I think there's two problems, right? Getting somebody to that intention, and then how do you execute on that intention? And I think getting to somebody to the intention is the harder part. Why should I care? That's the harder part. And that's where the data has to come in and allow everybody to realize that this is something that can help everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually, what you've just said. I mean, I'm always talking about intentions matter, and we have to be intentional about things because it focuses our brain. Our brain has got, millions of opportunities of what we can do, and it gets quite happily pulled in 100 different directions. And setting the intention of, we want people in our business that honor our values, that play to our values, and are diverse enough to challenge the status quo. Because in some ways they can be a bit polar opposites, and it's actually finding that way to bring them together to say, actually, if we're honoring our values, then the challenge this person potentially will bring into our organization, we must, encourage, embrace.
Yeah. And you're getting back to the values again, because, that's a great way to put it. Like, if making sure somebody is aligned with the value, and when they're speaking about in the hiring process, when they're talking about their experiences, you can easily bump that up against, well, did they push the status quo in this way? Did they lead humanly when they did it? Against what we decide, what we've categorized as leading humanly for us. Because challenging the status quo is fantastic, and it's how we grow as people, and we love it, and I love it. How we get to the challenge, that's the tricky part. You do it passive aggressively? Do you do it? Do you build consensus? Do you have a sense of humor about it? Are you defensive? Those are the things that can keep conversation going or shut it down. And if you shut it down, there's fallout from that. That's just not, it's kind of negative and toxic.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the questions I always think is great in these kind of spaces where you're looking to see if someone actually fits with the values is, this is one of our values. What does this mean to you? Just like trying to understand from their own words and their own, because effectively it's one of the things when I'm asking people to define their personal values, right? Write your own dictionary definition. What does that mean for you? How does it show up? And I always think that's quite a nice question. Obviously, you can give them to them up front so that they're prepared, but just, what does it mean to you? What's the meaning of this? Because then you can actually say, I'm picking, actually, is that close enough? Because obviously their definition is going to be different. But is it close enough? And yeah, exactly. Does it either fill me with excitement, or does it make me go, oh, right, goodness?
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because the scariest thing about giving somebody that kind of question ahead of time, and I know like you want a prepared, authentic answer. Oh man, we're not going to get to it, but I had this woman blow my mind this week on authenticity. But my fear would be they go up on our website, look at our values, and chat GTP that stuff back at me.
Yeah, true, very true. The power of AI. It's fantastic.
Well, it's not even AI. I mean, if you go look at our values, then you can, seat yourself in that. And what I really would love is I'd love for people to even challenge the value and say,
that's
well,
even the next level, isn't it?
Right?
Because that's actually, what I love about that is they're living your values by challenging you on what the values actually are for the business.
Absolutely,
I think it would be very unusual for that to happen in an interview when someone's looking for a job. But I like where you're going in the thinking. Actually, if they were living and honoring the value, then how amazing would that be if you could actually have that kind of a conversation in an interview?
I think it would depend on the interviewee, because I think you and I would
Okay.
be very comfortable challenging those values. I think we would. I think it depends on where you are in your career.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many factors that come into play. So,
Yeah.
what haven't I asked you about your original question, which would like give people either some actions to go take in their business or some ideas to go kind of ponder about?
So there's one thing that we didn't get to, and you had asked about it, and you'd asked a question that made me think about something I heard this week. I heard this. I was at a international women's history lunch panel, and one of the women on the panel said, "Authenticity is a privilege," and it
Yeah.
blew the back of my head open, because lately somebody had told me the idea of casual swearing or cursing was a privilege. And I was like, yeah, I can totally see that. I'm screwed. I'm the worst. I really have to change my behavior. But when she said authenticity is a privilege, it all kind of tied in together for me. And I realized that the most important thing for an organization to uh, to to a path of diversity is attracting the talent that you want to work at your company. And that happens through trust. And when you have trust, you have authenticity. And when you have authenticity, you have, and we'll bring this phrase back again, you'll have the receipts for other people looking at your company saying, do I want to work there? Oh, I do want to work there. This is who they are, and I like that.
Mm. Interesting. I saw a TED talk really similar to this. And I'll maybe drop it into the chat. And it's same thing, basically saying, don't ask me to show up as my authentic self. And then, every time I do, I get rejected. I get told, well, if you could just, dust off this corner and change this, and, getting labeled from the moment. And you're just like, wait a minute, you've just told me that you want me to show up as myself, and now you're labeling me and challenging me, and this is where, as we both know, trust is lost. That person's then on a tightrope between what you've told me to do and how you're behaving. Like what you're saying and what you're doing are just completely out of alignment.
And it's funny, because when she said this, I really started to think about, and this just happened this week, I really started to think about how in the past this has shown up. And I realized that we had people that I didn't like, for lack of a better way to put it, I didn't think were being their authentic selves. And it was frustrating to me. I'm just like, what do you need? Like, how much, like, you can do whatever you want here. We're like a small company, and all the founders are pretty progressive. So be yourself. But what I realized looking back on that is we did not give them the environment that they felt comfortable in. That's on us.
You weren't letting them belong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's all about being uncomfortable to learn how to be better. What you said earlier before we started the live.
Yeah. Understanding that innovation doesn't come from a place of comfort, it comes from a place of discomfort. And therefore, we need to innovate to be able to create the environments that we need for our businesses to thrive. And I think that's the next biggest innovation that's going to change the world of work, if I'm honest. And
for sure. Yeah.
Some companies are going to get left behind because they're struggling to do this. And I know you know this, but it's about our inner work. Self-leadership first, and then once we've done that, we can figure out, well, how does that show up in the business? Who am I as a leader? But quite often people are looking at who I am as a leader and how that works, and it's like you can't do one without the other. You've missed the baseline, and it's so difficult to help people see that. But yes, I know we're both talking the same on this point, so I don't think we need to spend too long on it. But I just want to say thank you, Donna. It's been like the last conversation we had. It's always fun. I learn a lot, and I appreciate having these conversations live, because I think it gives people some tactical things to go off and do, but also this conversation that there's not one size fits all. We all need to be in this process of learning and understanding and being curious, so that we can create those environments where people belong and they feel like they can bring their full selves to work.
Yeah. And I'll right back at you, Sarah. I love talking to you. I have such a good time, and I feel so energized after I talk to you. So thank you so much for inviting me to do this. This was a blast.
Cool. Then let's do it again sometime. Next time you
Absolutely.
put the strap line at the bottom that says "Let's start a conversation." You know
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
I'll just do hashtag Sarah at the bottom of it.
Oh, well, take care of yourself, and let's talk again soon.
Thanks,
Bye for
Sarah.
now.
Bye-bye.